what is offshoring? Is it outsourcing or is it remote working? So offshoring, what is it, and which one of you would like to take that question?
Happy to. Well, Jay, thank you very much for having us this morning, and thanks for everyone who joined the webinar. I guess these words tend to be used interchangeably by a lot of people, and there is a lot of confusion between the two. I guess my understanding of it and the big differentiator is whether you own an exclusive relationship with the talent or not. So outsourcing is when you go to a third party, say another system integrator, another agency, another supplier of talent, and you hire them to either provide a team or an outcome, a project. And typically that relationship is with that entity, with that company. So that's outsourcing. Offshoring is when you go outside of the domestic market to get talent, and typically that tends to be an exclusive relationship. So if we were to kind of explain it better, is you owning an exclusive relationship, direct relationship with the talent, as opposed to having another company sitting in the middle that can either manage your project or your outcome for you. Now, you might ask, what's the difference? Isn't it the same thing? I'd say no
Yep.
to that, because you have a lot more control when you have that direct relationship with the talent. You have more visibility. You are guaranteed that you have that same person working on your project. You manage them the same way you'd manage your people who are working for you in your company, in your bricks and mortar offices, if you have any, or in your domestic team. And yeah, you have more control, you have more visibility, you have better outcomes. When you go to an outsourcing model, you are literally just kicking the can down the road, really, because the other entity might have the same issues that you will have within your company. So they might have feast and famine. They might win a lot of business. All of a sudden, suddenly they move their A team from one project to the next, and you'll be none the wiser if you are working in that model. So yeah, we're big proponents and preachers of offshoring and maintaining that exclusive relationship with the talent, as
Yeah.
opposed to kind of
So the
having.
key thing there is that exclusive relationship. I'm guessing that's either through a hire or using perma freelance or freelance resource.
Perma-lancers, yeah, that's correct.
Freelancers.
Yeah, yeah.
And it sounds like, since COVID, the talent pool, obviously, you no longer have to be able to travel to an office. So we see agencies hiring talent from all over the UK. So this feels like it's just an extension of not being UK specific and saying, well, if there's talent we need and we haven't got the skills, why not look globally for it? That's what it feels like. And with this, just making a few notes there, there's a few things jumping out at me. And one is, we know in the UK there's a couple of real challenges for agencies. One is actually finding talent with the right skill set to deliver the work that clients are now asking for and demanding. So we know that's been a problem for many years. I think when we had Brexit, that made it even worse, because I used to be in agencies and there'd be a lot of European developers or a lot of European people working over here that had brought those skills over. They seem to have left. So I think that's become a challenge. So the skill shortage is one thing. And then the other thing, if you find these people with that talent, with those great skill sets that you need to deliver your clients' work now, they often carry quite a hefty salary cost, shall we say. And I know one of the things I'm constantly looking at with my clients is, what is that ratio of salary to GP? And it's not unusual now. Back in the day, we'd say that should be 55%. It crept to 60. Then we'd say, right, let's keep that between 60 and 65. It's not unusual now to see salary ratios north of 65% in agencies, which limits the ability to deliver profit. So with those two things in mind, how do you go about doing it? How do agencies look at doing this? And then, you touched on bringing the people in exclusive. What are the benefits to the agencies of doing this?
Yeah. So we when we started doing this many years ago, it was out of necessity rather than having this grand strategic plan. We were based in central London, working with what was then Magento, then it turned into Adobe Commerce, high demand, for that particular skill set when it came to development, but then also the related services, design, digital marketing, the costs were way too high. And even in central London, the volume of people against the volume of agencies that you're competing for push the prices up. There's fewer people available, they cost more, and also the better people were more picky about where they wanted to work. So it was very hard, aside from the cost, to even get the best people to come and talk to you, because there were too many other options. When you start looking overseas, you're broadening your talent pool. So whether you're in London or Manchester or Leicester or wherever it is in the UK, you're thinking just purely geographically and thinking purely about office. So however many mile ratio from the office, you draw a circle around it, and it's like, well, this is our pool of talent that we've got to look at. And obviously, if you're in London, there's more people, but there's also more competition. If you're somewhere smaller or more rural, there's fewer people, but less competition. But either way, you're restricted. As soon as you start looking outside of your geographical location, i.e. outside of the UK, and then you start bunching a load of countries together, that talent pool that you've got to look at just explodes. And of course, there's still competition for the talent domestically in some of these, for example, Eastern European countries. They have a lot of strong domestic tech and agency businesses, and also an increasing number of international businesses that are going and putting bases there. But there is still a huge volume of highly qualified, strong communicating, very skilled talent that's there, that's available. So going from looking at this tiny little geographical area to like tens or hundreds of millions of people over 10 or 20 countries, it just completely changes the game for you. Yes, there is a cost saving that's always there, but that shouldn't be the primary motivation. That's a nice benefit that you will get. The bigger thing is the fact you're going to get people quicker, and you're going to get better people than you would get locally. So all of a sudden, you're in a position where you can actually, yeah, you'll get a bit of improvement on your margin, but the quality of work you can deliver for your clients is actually going to be improved as well. And especially considering now, with the nature of the last year and a half of uncertainty of when a deal's going to drop, back in early 2023, everyone was hiring ahead of the curve. 2023, all of a sudden, it just turned into a disaster. People had to get rid of a load of people. Now you're in a position where you'll obviously have your core team. A lot of agencies would have cut back on that team as well, but they want to wait until they've got the business in before they can actually look at additional resource if necessary. And again, the very nature of the agency world, the feast and famine, is you don't nicely win a project a month, you'll win nothing for 3 months and then 3 in one go. And then it's like, oh, what do we do? Well, if you're looking remotely offshore at a larger pool of talent, then there's more people, then you're going to be able to hire them quicker, get better people in quicker that are also going to save you a bit of money.
And just to expand a little bit on that, because I think that's really interesting, that hiring quicker. Because we know in the UK, I guess, when you've got notice periods and things like that. So just expand a little bit on that ability to hire quicker. I think that's really, really interesting as well.
Ultimately, it's just driven by the volume of people. You will encounter notice periods, of course. But in the UK, if you're hiring for a Flutter developer, a senior Flutter developer, you want someone really good. Maybe they're going to be a technical architect as well. So the more senior and complex you go, the fewer the people are. So the notice period and everything's fine, but you've got to find them first. You've got to run them through your process. Then you've got to, so it could take, in some cases, it could take 6 months or more in the UK to find a really, really skilled hire. Well, if there's more people, if your starting point is a greater pool of talent, even if they have a month's notice period on the end of it, in our experience, these kind of people, you can find them within a couple of weeks, certainly with a service like ours. So because there's a bigger pool of talent to fish from, which means if you've won this project and it's due to start on the 1st of December, and you need this skilled team in order to do it, and you don't have it, just looking locally, you might not hit that deadline.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So we've got this great pool of talent globally with really good skills. There's a volume of them. There's a little bit of a benefit that their salaries maybe less competitive, shall we say, than UK salaries. So there could be a nice bonus to the bottom line. It feels a little bit like a no-brainer. And if that's the case, why isn't more agencies doing this? I come across very few of my clients actually do this, but looking at that there, you've said, get an exclusive partnership with people, hire them, or perma temps. You've got the control, you've got the visibility, you've got a wider pool of talent. The cost for having those people might be cheaper. Feels a little bit like a no-brainer, but doesn't feel like it's being embraced in the UK at the moment. What are your sort of thoughts around that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. A lot of people are not doing it or not doing it as well, and there's good reasons for it. And typically, they're the same reasons why hires fail, even domestically. Um, Obviously, a lot of people have heard stories of hiring somebody offshore, or they've tried it and it didn't work. I mean, God knows, when we tried the first time, it wasn't a walk in the park. We got it wrong a lot of times before starting to get it right. And if I was to sum it up, it's the same stuff that you need to do to have a successful team domestically. So starting by the, actually writing up and deciding what is the job spec, what are you looking for, what are the roles and responsibilities, and then your interviewing process. Is it thorough enough? Are you assessing for the right things? Moving on from there, onboarding. Onboarding for me is one of the biggest factors that either set you right for a good hire or not,
Yeah.
set you to succeed or to fail. And then ongoing management, your ceremonies, your touch points, your ability to get feedback. Especially when you're talking about somebody who's working remotely, but this is true for people who are working remotely in the UK for agencies. What are you doing to keep them motivated? Do they know what good look like? Are they just working on tasks as opposed to kind of sharing in the vision and the culture and objectives of the organization? So all these things will help you succeed in these hires and making them work well for you. But you have to have these processes in place, starting from the interview, the onboarding, and the ongoing management of your talent.
Okay. Do you think when agencies look at this, do you think they start from a position of there's a great pool to find this talent, or do you think their mindset is right, offshoring, it's cheaper? Because I think that could have an impact on how successful it is. What, in your experience, when agencies reach out to you, why are they reaching out? What's
Multiple reasons, really multiple reasons. I mean, what we're seeing more and more, there is a maturity in a lot of our clients that they understand what are the big benefits, the big ticket benefits. Obviously, we all know that, cost of living in the UK, London specifically, but across the UK is way higher than a lot of, we think of the East European market as probably the best fit for UK agencies simply because of the language, communication skills, the level and the standard and the quality of the talent. So that tends to be like 95% of what we tend to service for UK agencies, time zone being pretty much the same as the UK or very close to it. Reasons why they come to us and reasons why they look at offshore, like David said earlier, one of the big ones is time to hire. You're in a project, you need a team to deliver, or you need more people in your existing teams. That clients cannot wait for work to start happening. That needs to happen ASAP. In the more traditional roles, like, be it to developers, designers, PMs, online marketers, you're talking about we are able to kind of start giving options to our clients within a day or two, sometimes in the same day. Um, and having that person being interviewed, be in situ within a week, potentially sometimes, it's a big game changer. Literally means that the work can start straight away. So that's a big, big advantage. The other one is what David alluded to earlier, is leveling up from a skill set point of view. You're talking about if your budget can get you in the UK, somebody with like a 2-3 years experience, suddenly you'd be thinking, okay, I can save some money. Maybe I can save 20-25% on the salary. But what can I get in terms of skill set? Maybe I can get somebody with like 5-7 years experience. Take the example of like an SEO with 2 years experience. What can they really do? How much have they really done in those 2 years? Somebody with 5 years or 7 years experience is a game changer. Maybe they're an expert in something like GA4 or GTM. Maybe they bring some business intelligence capabilities that you didn't have or you didn't even think of within your business. So it's a real opportunity to level up from a skill set point of view and improve your offering as a business with every single hire. And I think that's a big game changer. Again, I come back, you can't turn your nose on a 20% or 30% saving on the salary, which is great. Sometimes it's achievable. But that, I think, time to hire and the skill sets that come to the table, I think these are bigger factors if
They're the
you're
bigger
an
factors.
agency.
And on this call, we've been talking. It feels a lot around like the digital skill set, SEO, developers, etc. Is that predominantly where you see agencies looking to offshore, or there's other roles than that in the agencies, client services, etc. Do you see anyone offshoring that type of role, or is
Yeah.
it predominantly let's stick to the tech? What's your feelings on that?
No, client services as well. And again, from our own experiences, as we started offshoring, so by the time we exited our agency, we were about 45 people. It was about 5 in the UK. Everyone else was offshore across 8 different countries, including most of our client services teams as well. The English standards of Eastern Europeans, professional Eastern Europeans, is incredibly high. Grammatically, I hate to say it, but they're better than a lot of domestic native speakers. Their communication skills are very strong. Their experiences of dealing with clients, a lot of them will have international experience. They'll have worked with European companies, US companies before. Yeah, I mean, we were blown away when we started doing it. We were a bit nervous when we started doing it. One of our first line supports, he filled in for one of our project managers because he was ill for a few weeks. The client wanted to keep him. And then we were like, oh, hold on a minute. So gradually, as our client-facing people were leaving, we were replacing them with people from Romania, Bulgaria, Serbia, even Ukraine. And they were phenomenal. And again, now we're seeing the same with our clients, that they're taking the opportunities to look outside of the UK because, again, they'll get people that are better than what they would get locally. Because the other factor as well is, like Bashir's just mentioned, living standards in the UK are high. And there's been a lot of research into what motivates people to stay or move jobs. Money is obviously a factor, but there is actually a limit to how much money people need to be objectively happy. And once people have got enough money that they've got a roof over their head, they can go on a holiday and all the rest of it. Most people are not motivated by having Ferraris and super yachts and all the rest of it. But the problem is that because the living costs in the UK are so high, you are going to be more at risk of losing someone if someone is really happy where they are. Someone comes and offers them another £5,000, they're probably just going to go. Offshore, the salaries they're getting give them incredibly high living standards already. So as long as you're giving them really exciting projects, you're a good agency or a business to work in, you're developing their career, you're focusing on all this other stuff, you'll hold on to them for much longer as well. So you'll attract better people and you'll hold on to them for longer, which definitely makes you sleep better at night.
It's interesting that the offshoring of things like your client service team, and you said when you exited about 45, 5 sort of key UK and 40 off. So were your key roles in the UK like your client service directors and
Heads off, purely heads off, Jay. It was
Yeah.
literally heads off at the end. And it's not because we tried to do that, it happened very organically over a long period of time. So every time so our approach was like, you know what, every time we have somebody leave or a new person or a new hire, we'll open it up domestically and offshore. And we'll
Right.
compare the two. And, obviously some of the considerations were how much we're paying and what we're getting for it. And slowly, we ended up kind of moving. At the end, we were in 8 different countries, and heads off only in the King's Cross office.
Wow. Have you seen any agencies like have a heads off that's from offshore? Have you come across any agencies that
We
have
hired them.
done that?
We have an example client recently, an SEO agency, UK headquartered, founded, run, dealing with predominantly clients in the US and delivery mostly in Eastern Europe, client services across the UK and Eastern Europe. And they were looking for a head of client services, and we ended up finding them a superstar from Hungary, of all places, that manages the UK. So it's a senior head of client services hire. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I guess this question, as I'm thinking, that you've got some now we're looking at like senior people in that example in Hungary, developers in different Eastern European countries, also some people in the domestic UK. It can be quite challenging managing the the word culture, managing your culture in an agency when you're just UK based. How does that play out if you're then trying to manage a culture across multiple countries that also have different attitudes and ideas to what culture looks like? And have you got any thoughts, experience around that type of stuff? How did you guys do it?
Yeah, I mean, we start by making sure that everyone is clear on what's expected of them. That's, I think, the first thing you need to do as a business, especially as a business who deals with clients, as a business who do a lot of the same work again and again. You need to make sure everything is documented down to how do we expect to communicate with each other? When do we expect you to be available? How quickly you're supposed to respond to a client? All of these things, a lot of people kind of leave it to chance and leave it to people to make decisions on a case-by-case basis. So the more of that you codify and you give your employees a clear way of doing things. This is our agency way of doing things. How we communicate with each other, make sure that there is a culture of respect and inclusiveness. Make sure that things like non-work related conversations are happening. Ultimately, these are people. You don't want them to feel isolated. You want them to feel the love of the agency. Things that you'd normally have, like going for drinks after the office, are not the only way to bond with each other. There are a lot of ways we can bond with each other using online channels. I mean, one of the things that we used to do is create Slack channels for various interests within the company. So people who are into fitness, people who are into reading books, people who are into sharing knowledge within a particular area. And you'd be surprised, Jay, to find out that we all watch the same Netflix movies, we all read the same books,
Yeah.
we all have the same interests, cooking clubs, you name it. People engage with this stuff, and probably more than having a beer in a very loud pub, and more about drinking and
Yeah.
less about communicating and connecting. These are things that creates real human connections. And also we used to do in-person things. So we used to have like 1 year and we're not the only ones. This is like very, very common amongst companies that have people across multiple jurisdictions. They have like maybe a yearly event where everyone comes together somewhere. And this is a lot cheaper. You're still saving a lot of money on having people travel daily to, an office. By bringing them 2 or 3 days to, once a year. That's something to look forward to as well. It could be just members of certain teams getting together. We have clients who've done, what have they done? Hired a house somewhere in Spain where everyone who works remotely for them can just go and work from there a few days whenever they want. That allows various teams to schedule at the same time. And, so there is a lot of initiatives.
So thinking a little bit outside the box of how you could
100%.
do this.
Yeah.
I mean, well, the thing you said there that I really liked, I'm thinking of my own business here, because we have lots of people that work remotely. We try to come in the office, but actually we haven't set out a guide of what we expect in terms of when you should reply, when you should do. We do, and I'm sure all the clients I speak to, very much it's on a case by case basis. We haven't got strict guidelines, which, as you've said, it was like, that's so obvious. That's literally so obvious. Why have we done this, guys? Can you believe it's 9:56? I cannot believe how quick that time's gone. So we always ask our amazing guests to come on the A game. If you had one piece of advice, so I guess you guys could have two because there's two of you. So if you had a piece of advice each for the people are on this webinar, what would it be? What would it be for them?
Okay, so my piece of advice. I think you mentioned earlier about why are agencies not doing it. Lots of agencies have tried it that we've spoken to over the years, and lots of them, they had a first bad experience. We had a first bad experience. When you're doing anything new, so there's a surfboard. Since I moved to Bristol, I've been going every week learning to surf. The first year it was a disaster. I'd go just get beaten up by the waves every week, but I just remember and just figure out a little bit of where it's going wrong. And eventually I'm not Kelly Slater yet, but I've improved because and you're never good at anything when you first do it. You've got to practice and learn and develop. In the same way with offshoring, when we first did it a few times, it was a total disaster, but we carried on trying, and we learned, and we spoke to people, and we constantly evolved and developed our ideas until we got really good at it. So my piece of advice would be, it's a massive opportunity. It's a huge competitive advantage because not enough people are doing it. If you haven't tried and you're scared, you just gotta get going. And if you have tried and it failed, go and try it again, because like I say, we messed up a few times before we got it right.
Brilliant advice. Bashir?
Mine is more about, our audience here are all agency owners, and one of the lessons I've learned running our own agency for a long time, what gets you there is doing better work. Always striving for being the best at what you do and doing better work again and again, improving the quality and the standard of the work that you deliver. And you can only do that by having the best people. So be uncompromising when it comes to the standard of the people that you're getting into your business, because that's the only thing that is going to get you,
That's your
better
differentiator.
clients, bigger margins, bigger profits. It starts with getting the best people that you can get your hands on.